My name is Emma, and if there's one thing my family loves more than Sunday dinners, it's making me feel small. I stepped into the dining room that Saturday night, and instantly I felt every judgmental stare. The air smelled like my mom's roast chicken, mixed with the faint floral perfume my cousin Sarah always wore. The chandelier above the table gleamed, casting golden light across the polished mahogany, glinting off crystal glasses and silver cutlery like tiny accusations. The curtains were drawn, but the last rays of evening sunlight streamed through, highlighting dust dancing lazily in the air. Everyone was already there. My father, Robert, was leaning back in his chair, swirling his wine, smirking like he was enjoying a private joke at my expense. My mother, Linda, was fussing with napkins, face soft but her eyes sharp and calculating. My sister Claire lounged at the end of the table, scrolling her phone, but occasionally shooting me looks that made me wish I could disappear. Sarah and Mia, my cousins, were whispering and giggling, clearly plotting their next jab. The moment I stepped in, the dig started. "Emma, still single?" Sarah's voice cut through the room, loud enough for everyone to hear. She leaned toward Mia, whispering something that made the younger girl snicker. I swallowed hard, forcing a calm smile, and slid into my chair. "Yes," I said evenly, still figuring things out. Claire rolled her eyes. "Figures," she muttered under her breath. Linda's lips pressed together in that thin-line smile. "Maybe one day, you'll meet someone special, if you try hard enough," she said sweetly, the words sharp enough to cut. Robert chuckled, swirling his wine. "Patience is a virtue, right, Emma?" I felt heat rush to my cheeks, my stomach twisting. Every glance, every whisper, every smirk from that table was like a dagger. The laughter, the subtle side glances, the way they all leaned in as if to mock me. It was suffocating. Even the ticking of the wall clock felt louder, counting down the moments of my humiliation. Dinner began, but nothing eased the tension. Sarah whispered jokes to Mia, glancing at me with a smug grin. Claire muttered, poking at her salad. My parents whispered behind their hands, occasionally exchanging smirks as if I were a character in a show meant to entertain them. I sipped my water and kept a polite smile plastered on my face, calm, composed. On the outside, I looked like the obedient daughter sitting quietly at the table, but inside a fire had ignited. I had been underestimated my entire life, dismissed for being single, ridiculed for trying, and tonight, I wasn't going to sit there and take it. I rested my hands on the polished table, feeling the smooth surface under my finger. Every laugh, every whispered comment, every sideways glance. They had unknowingly built the stage for what was coming next. Tonight, the Emma they thought they knew, the helpless single girl they loved to mock, would disappear. I excused myself from the table under the pretense of getting a glass of water. Every whispered insult, every smirk, every sideways glance they had thrown at me all night fueled a fire in my chest. Tonight, they weren't just going to see Emma, they were going to see the Emma they never expected. When I returned, I wasn't alone. I stepped into the dining room, holding Michael's hand, and immediately, the room went silent. Conversations froze mid-word. Forks hovered inches from mouths. Sarah's eyes went wide, her perfect little smirk vanishing in an instant. Claire's jaw dropped, and I could see the disbelief etched across her face. Even my mother, Linda, seemed paralyzed, dropping the napkin she had been fussing with. My father, Robert, leaned back so fast, it almost looked like he had been physically pushed, his smug expression gone. "This is Michael," I said, my voice calm, measured, like I was introducing a guest from another country. "My fiancé." The silence was deafening. What? What?" Sarah finally whispered, her voice trembling. "Fiancé," Claire blurted, looking like she had just seen a ghost. Linda could only stare, lips slightly parted, hands shaking. Robert opened his mouth, closed it, and tried again. I didn't know." Michael, calm and collected, extended his hand toward my father with a polite smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you all." Then he added, casually, like it was nothing, "Oh, and I work at my father's company. Robert, you remember me, right? I'm actually your boss." The room froze. You could almost hear the air itself stop moving. Forks clattered onto plates, glasses rattled. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Claire looked like she might faint. My mother's eyes widened, her face drained of color. My father's mouth fell open, then twisted into a mixture of shock and disbelief, his mind racing to comprehend the insult to his ego. I let myself smile calmly, sitting back in my chair as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Inside, though, I was buzzing with satisfaction. Every whispered insult, every sideways glance, every judgment they had thrown at me over the years, it had all led to this moment. The Emma they had dismissed, mocked, and underestimated for years was suddenly untouchable. Michael shook my father's hand firmly, his voice calm, carrying an unmistakable edge of authority. Funny, isn't it? The little girl you always underestimated now works closely with me. Robert stammered, trying to regain composure, but words failed him. My mother whispered something incoherent, glancing between him and me like she was trying to find a way to contain the chaos. Sarah was whispering furiously to Mia, likely trying to process what had just happened, while Claire's hands shook slightly as she pressed them to her mouth. I reached over and lightly squeezed Michael's hand, smiling faintly. You don't need to say anything. Just meet your daughter-in-law. The room had erupted into chaos, everyone talking at once, trying to regain control, trying to understand what had just happened. And for the first time that night, I wasn't the target. I was the one holding the power. Every smirk, every eye roll, every whisper, they had underestimated me my entire life. And now, for the first time, I watched as their smug confidence crumbled before me. The room was a hurricane of whispers and stares. Silverware clinked against plates as Sarah fumbled with her fork, her face pale. Claire's eyes darted between me and Michael, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't form words. My mother, Linda, had her hands pressed to her chest, muttering under her breath. And my father, Robert. Well, Robert looked like someone had just yanked the rug out from under him. Michael stood calmly beside me, his presence commanding the room without a word. His subtle smile only made the tension thicker, like a silent challenge. I leaned back slightly, folding my hands on the table, savoring every second. Emma, how long? Robert finally managed, his voice shaky. Several months, I said smoothly, smiling. We just hadn't made it public. I wanted to wait for the right moment. Robert opened his mouth, then closed it again, overwhelmed. Sarah whispered furiously to Mia. Did you hear that? She's insane. Emma, this is inappropriate. Claire finally snapped, her voice high-pitched, eyes flashing with fury. Bringing your fiancé here. Your fiancé is... My fiancé. I interrupted, my voice calm but cutting. And apparently, your boss. Every word landed like a hammer. Claire's jaw dropped further. Sarah's whispering stopped mid-sentence. Linda's face went from shock to panic, and Robert's mouth hung open, his knuckles white as he gripped his wine glass. Michael leaned in slightly, looking directly at Robert. I thought you'd like to know before the board meeting next week, he said, calm and controlled. It's important you're aware of your new chain of command. The room exploded into whispers, muttering, and nervous laughter. My family was trying to recover, but there was nothing they could say. I caught every subtle glance, Sarah trying to regain superiority, Claire trying to compose herself, my mother frantically calculating how to smooth things over. I finally leaned forward, voice gentle but with an unmistakable edge. You know, all those times you laughed at me, told me I'd never be good enough. I just wanted to make sure you understood, now that it's too late, that I can make my own life. And it's a life where I am in control. Michael placed his hand on mine, calm, confident, solid. And, I added, watching every reaction, I really do hope you enjoy dinner. I wouldn't want all this tension to ruin the roast. Sarah choked on her water. Claire slammed her napkin down. My mother's lips trembled. Robert looked like he might collapse. The table was chaos, everyone scrambling to regain control. But the power had shifted. For the first time in years, I was the one with the upper hand. Every whispered insult, every sideways glance, every judgment. They had built this moment, and now I was finally untouchable. The dinner had barely started when I realized just how fragile their composure really was. My family's whispers filled the room, jittery and frantic, and every glance they shot me was laced with panic. They hadn't underestimated me for years. But tonight, I could feel the power shift. Michael leaned casually back in his chair, surveying the chaos like a general watching a battlefield. Every now and then, he shot a calm glance at my father, and Robert's fingers twitched nervously on the table. It was delicious. I cleared my throat, smiling sweetly. I thought it would be nice if we tried something different tonight, I said. Instead of the usual seating arrangement, I went ahead and switched it up a bit. Every eyebrow in the room shot up. What do you mean? My mother asked, voice tight. I gestured toward the place cards I had subtly placed before dinner, each one carefully assigned to put the most judgmental family members next to someone they couldn't control. Sarah ended up beside my younger cousin, Mia, who had been coached to ask constant, awkward questions about her dating life. Claire was seated next to Michael. And Robert, my father, had to sit directly across from Michael. Oh, that's interesting, Robert said, voice cracking slightly. I smiled, calm, measured. I just thought it would be fun to shake things up. You know, to see everyone interact in new ways. The tension was palpable. Sarah was twitching, trying to maintain her composure as Mia asked pointedly about her latest boyfriend. Claire was fuming, glaring daggers at me while Michael casually sipped his water, perfectly relaxed. My parents were whispering frantically, their whispers sharp but powerless. I let the silence hang, letting them stew in the discomfort I had orchestrated. Every nervous glance, every twitch, every muttered insult, they were all mine now. Emma, I think you're overdoing this, Claire finally snapped, trying to regain authority. Oh, I don't think so, I said softly, my smile unchanging. After all, I've spent years being overlooked. I think I deserve a little fun. Michael reached over, brushing my hand lightly, and said, "You've done more than deserve it. You've earned it." And just like that, the room tilted even further. My family was scrambling, trying to regain control, trying to maintain appearances, and failing spectacularly. Every insult they had once thrown at me now felt meaningless, because I was the one holding the power. By the time the main course was served, the air in the dining room felt electric tense, charged, impossible to ignore. Every glance from my family was a mixture of panic, suspicion, and awe. Michael sat calmly beside me, radiating control, while I silently savored every reaction. "Emma, what is all this?" My mother finally asked, voice trembling, her hands twisting in her lap. I smiled sweetly. "Oh, nothing really. Just thought it would be nice to clear the air a little." Their confusion was delicious. Sarah kept glancing at me, whispering furiously to Claire, who was glaring like she might explode. Robert's face was red, veins popping at his temple, while Linda tried to regain composure, but failed spectacularly. I set down my fork and leaned slightly forward. "You know," I began, soft enough to sound casual. "It's funny how little things from the past have a way of coming out at the worst possible time." All eyes turned to me. I was cleaning out some old files in my office. I continued, letting the pause stretch just long enough, and I found a few interesting emails. Sarah choked on her water. Claire's face turned pale. Robert's hand gripped his wine glass so hard it rattled. "These emails," I said, opening my tablet for dramatic effect, "show some very questionable decisions that involve, among other things, misuse of company resources. Funny enough, Michael here is directly involved in reviewing all of them." Michael casually leaned over, showing the screen to Robert. "I thought you'd like to review these, sir. Transparency is important, right?" The room erupted into chaos. Shouts, whispers, and frantic attempts to regain composure filled the air. Sarah's whispering became panicked stammering. Claire was trembling, unable to hide her fury. Linda's hands flew to her mouth as her panic grew. Robert was speechless, fumbling for words, every ounce of his authority crumbling before him. I let the moment linger, my smile calm, serene. "It's amazing," I said softly, "how much fun it is to finally watch people who've underestimated you squirm." Michael reached over, placing his hand lightly on mine again. "Well done," he murmured, just loud enough for the table to hear. The room was in shambles. For the first time in years, my family realized that the girl they mocked, whispered about, and dismissed had outsmarted them completely. Every insult they had thrown at me bounced off, meaningless. Every whisper, every eye roll, every judgment. It had all built to this moment. I leaned back, calm, watching their chaos unfold. Tonight, they weren't just shocked. Tonight, they were learning a lesson: never underestimate Emma. By the time dessert arrived, the dining room was electric with tension. My family sat stiffly, still trying to process everything that had happened: the shocking fiancé reveal, the rearranged seating, the explosive emails. Michael's calm authority made Robert practically melt in his chair, while Claire and Sarah looked like they might implode from humiliation. My mother, Linda, was whispering frantically to herself, unsure whether to cry, apologize, or pretend nothing had happened. I set down my fork and leaned forward, smiling. "I just wanted to say thank you," I began, voice soft but deliberate. "Thank you for all the years of judgment, for the whispers, the smirks, the constant 'you'll never be enough.' It's because of all of that that I became who I am today." I watched as their jaws dropped, the room silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. "You see," I continued, "I may have been underestimated, but tonight, I think it's clear that Emma is no longer the girl you could dismiss. Emma is a woman who makes her own choices, and sometimes a woman who plays her hand perfectly." Michael smiled beside me, squeezing my hand lightly. "And let's just say," he added, looking at Robert, "that working with Emma has been enlightening. I think everyone here now knows exactly who's in charge." Robert sputtered, red-faced, as he realized the depth of what had just happened. Every ounce of his authority, every smug smirk from years gone by, had crumbled. Claire and Sarah could barely look at me without flinching, while Linda quietly shook her head, muttering, I never realized." I let the moment stretch, enjoying the shock, the awe, and the helpless scrambling. For the first time, my family wasn't mocking me. They weren't judging me. They were listening. They were learning. "Dinner has been enlightening," I said finally, standing gracefully. "I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the evening." And with that, I stood, hand in Michael's, letting them sit in stunned silence. For years they had underestimated me, laughed at me, dismissed me, and tonight they had learned the most important lesson: never underestimate Emma. As we walked out of the dining room, Michael whispered, "You handled that beautifully." I smiled, feeling a satisfaction I had never felt before. For once I was in control. For once they were powerless, and for once I had proven that the little girl they used to mock had grown into a woman they could never ignore. The chandelier above glinted one last time, dust dancing in the evening light. And I knew this night would be remembered, not for their judgment, not for their whispers, but for my victory.